So an update on the Gaza massacre from yesterday. These protests near the border of Israel and Gaza, and it's not really a border, it's a fence, and that border is not legal. But anyway, those protests have been happening now for 6 weeks. They're culminating and did on Tuesday. So that's the 70th anniversary of what Israel celebrates, the formation of Israel, and what the Palestinians decry as the Nakba, the catastrophe. So it got very heated on Monday, partly because the U.S. moved its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Now that was supposed to be part of the final peace negotiations. When the U.S. did that, basically they declared, we don't really care about the peace negotiations. We're not going to be neutral, and we're going to give Israel what it wants, even before the negotiations begin. So there was a lot of justifiable anger in that regard, and the right-wing government of Israel has shown no evidence that they want to do those negotiations. That has not been the case for all governments of Israel. Of course, they famously did a peace deal with Egypt when President Jimmy Carter brought them together, and Yitzhak Rabin was on the precipice of a peace deal before a right-wing Israeli terrorist killed him. So now the update is unfortunately tragic. The death count has gone up. The number of wounded has gone down, because in the first day of any tragedy, there's always a little bit of a fog of war. So let me give you the new numbers. Of the 60 victims in Monday's protests, as HuffPost reports, 8 were children, the ministry said. Yesterday, the latest numbers were 58, now 60 have died. More than 2,400 people have been reported wounded as of Tuesday morning. The earlier numbers were 2,700, but now officials at the hospitals have brought that number down and said, no, it's only 2,400. Unfortunately, 8, as we just explained, were children, including an infant, Laila Al-Gandour. She passed away. Let me show you her picture. She died after inhaling toxic fumes from the tear gas. Obviously, all these stories are tragic. They went to bury her today, and Lila's mother said, "Let her stay with me. It is too early for her to go." But she is in fact gone. An Israeli newspaper said, well, she might have died for other reasons. Maybe she had a pre-existing condition. Maybe. Doctors Without Borders condemned the violence as, quote, unacceptable and inhuman in a statement, saying it hasn't seen bloodshed at this level in years. Another statement from Doctors Without Borders, here's a direct quote: "It is unbearable to witness such a massive number of unarmed people being shot in such a short time." Now, there's a lot of propaganda in the United States by the Trump administration and conservative outlets like Fox News, basically saying that the Palestinians had it coming. Rod Shah, speaking for the White House, said that this was a propaganda effort by Hamas to get killed. Now, if it was a propaganda effort, why did you play into it? What, was Israel tricked into killing these unarmed people? So if you think some of them were hurling stones and had burning tires, you are right. In fact, I have a picture that I'm going to show you about that in a second. If you think that all 40,000 protesters were terrorists, as the Israeli government claims, that is preposterous. No one who's unbiased could possibly believe that, and none of the reporters on the scene, none of the human rights activists, none of the doctors at the scene can confirm that. Instead, as I just read you the quote from the doctors, they say they were largely unarmed, and there have been no evidence presented of any guns or bombs. When the Israelis are asked, hey, you claim that they might have had bombs, where are the bombs? Oh, we got them before the bombs went off. Yeah, that's convenient. So where are the bombs? None of them went off, and none of them can be found. And none of them have been videotaped, even though there's video of the protests and the violence all over media. Pretty convenient how all the unbiased people at the scene say that they were enormously unarmed as a percentage. And again, I'll show you the guys who were doing some of the violence in a second. So now let's go to one more organization who's tracking this, the United Nations. I know in America, conservatives think the world working together to try to bring peace and end poverty and end disease is a terrible idea. I mean, if you're outside of America, what an insane thought. But conservatives in this country have been convinced of that, partly because of their beliefs in the end times and the prophecy as they interpret it, that the world working together is a bad thing and it would anger God, their sky God, okay? But in reality, of course, the United Nations does a lot of great work, and their job is to be unbiased and to protect the wounded, the needy, etc. So in this case, they write, the rules on the use of force under international law have been repeated many times, but appear to be ignored again and again. It seems anyone is liable to be shot dead or injured, women, children, press, first responders, bystanders, and at almost any point up to 700 meters from the fence. Now, 2 points important there. Number one, for all the right-wingers who say, oh no, the UN is against Israel. Do you want to know who authorized the formation of Israel? The UN. Oh, the UN can't ever do anything legitimate. So does that mean the state of Israel is not legitimate because the UN authorized it? No, it's preposterous. It's obviously convenient. Oh, when the UN says Israel should exist, the UN is wonderful. What a great organization the UN is. When the UN says Israel is committing atrocities and everyone on the scene backs that up, they go, oh, the UN. Can you believe the UN? Outrageous, right? But the second part that's important is they explain that people are getting shot and killed 700 meters from the fence. If you live in America, you might not know the metric system. That's about 700 yards. That's about 7 football fields. Now, were there people throwing stones? Yes, look, here's a picture. There's many pictures and video. Now, do you think that guy's going to be able to hit a soldier on the other side of the fence 700 yards away with that rock and do damage? 7 football fields, that's gonna carry and land on an Israeli soldier and do damage. Does anyone actually believe that? So, by the way, that is the same weapon used by David against Goliath. That weapon is thousands of years old. The Israelis say they had to use live bullets, not rubber bullets, because the rubber bullets couldn't reach the protesters. Think about that. You were in imminent danger, but they were so far away your rubber bullets could not reach them. If you're using a sniper to kill someone, by definition, you're not in imminent danger. He's a sniper. He's at a great distance. That's why he's a sniper. Okay, now, look, we showed you the baby, and then there are men, women, children, etc. that were killed. But I want to show you the men, because Palestinian men are shown in American media and demonized so regularly. And by the nature of the fact that they are men, they are presumed guilty in America. A Palestinian man, no. But these are real people of Palestine. Both of those guys, the first guy was a teenager and this guy is obviously an adult. They both had their brothers killed in the protests. So that guy grew up with his brother his whole life. They played together, probably went to school together. They lived under occupation for their entire life. And his brother went to protest that occupation and he's now dead. That's real grief. Now that's a grown man and that's his brother that he's known his whole life, dead. They're not what the American media portray them as, and certainly what the right wing portray them as. They are, in fact, real human beings. And they have lived under occupation for decades. Now the US government basically tells them, you have no hope. And if you go to protest at that border area and Israel shoots you dead, we're going to say it was your fault. Hamas made us shoot you. You made us shoot you by doing a protest. How dare you? If they're not allowed to do protests, they're not allowed to go to the UN and ask for a state, they're not allowed to do an economic boycott, what hope do they have? They're supposed to wait for the benevolence of Netanyahu and Trump? What has happened in Gaza is a massacre, and it is heartbreaking. And if you don't care about those human beings and you think they should be kept in basically an open air prison for the rest of their lives, there is something deeply wrong with you. You are an immoral person. And don't get me wrong, if you say, hey, But on the other hand, Israel should be safe. Of course they should. But on the other hand, there should be two states. Of course there should. On the other hand, we can't allow every Palestinian to go back and reclaim their land because that would present an existential problem for Israel. I understand that. If you say we have to do negotiations and the Palestinians will not get everything they want, of course, that's the whole point of negotiations. But if you say, no, I'm going to demonize them all. I'm going to call them all terrorists. I'm going to say if they get anywhere, not even near our fence, I'm going to execute them with snipers and then blame them for it. And you think that you had to do that because your life is so much more important than their lives and that you are never going to set them free, then yes, you are an immoral person. Two easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.